pocket party.
And we're back. Hey, everybody. We have Rob Cook with me today on Pocket Party. How are you, Rob?
What's up, party starter? I'm doing well, big dog.
I want to say thank you for taking a little time out of your day to be on the show with us.
Oh, man, thank you for having me, brother. I'm glad to be here.
Let's tell the audience how you started and got into comedy. You're not only are you a comedian, you're an elementary school therapist.
Yes, sirree. I do my therapy in the daytime. I live in Rancho Cucamonga, so I drive to LA about 3 to 4 nights per week and just try to hit as many mics as I can. I started doing comedy when I was 19 years old. I had a football dream, and that's a rough sport. So unfortunately, I didn't get the scholarship I wanted out of high school. I went to a junior college. Mom was like, you're not talking as much. You're kind of quiet. So I've learned that comedy is a therapeutic process for me. You take that pain and you turn it into laughs.
Absolutely. It's funny when you said Rancho Cucamonga. When I first heard that town, I didn't even know it was real. I was like, I remember I was driving down I want to say the 210, and it said, "Welcome to Rancho Cucamonga." And I was like, what? That's like a thing out of a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah. If you see the cartoons, Bugs is always like, I made a right at Cucamonga, and people don't really think it's a real place. And then, it was in Friday too, but it's a real place. Rancho,
yeah.
Place.
It's like, where'd you live before Rancho Cucamonga? I lived in no man's land. I lived in, Timbuktu. You ever heard I live in Timbuktu? It's right outside of, it's a funny place. I think maybe even being from a funny place can kind of help,
Absolutely.
I remember there was a comedian. I did a casino right off of the 5. I forget the name of the casino. It's Commerce Casino. And there was a comedian. Now you got to remember, the audience is like, at that particular night, it was probably 99% Latino. And this female comedian, white girl with blonde hair, she was talking about growing up in Wisconsin, and it didn't relate at all. Like her material, I'm sure it was funny in many other places, but they were used to comedians kind of speaking to them, and even me, I would do my grito. I'd be like, "Cha, ahua." I talk about growing up in Fresno and how they call me Rooster. What's up, Rooster? Come here, you red-headed rooster. And so then this girl comes up, and she was talking like, "Oh, I'd milk the cows, and in the morning I'd go milk the cows, and then my pa." And then she didn't really get any laughs. And then she walked off stage. And I remember the MC was trying to be nice, but it was actually pretty funny. He goes, "Come on, guys, don't get mad. She didn't grow up in somewhere that wasn't funny."
Yeah.
But that's pretty.
You gotta have that relatable stuff.
Right.
When I get on stage and if I say, I'm from Rancho Cucamonga, it usually gets a laugh every time. And people are like, "Oh, I've been there."
Yeah. And even if you get to the point where you start traveling and you go to outside of California, it still sounds funny. And it kind of makes, it's like, it's endearing, it's like when I tell people I'm from Fresno, they're like, usually the audience will be like, "Ooh," or and then I just play off of it. I'm like, yeah, like, I go, at least you guys weren't like, "Oh, I'm sorry." That actually happened to me once. I got off an airplane. I was the last passenger to get off the airplane. And they were like, "On behalf of our Fresno-based flight crew, we thank you for flying United." And we were in United. We were like in Florida, which was so weird to me. I was like, "Wow, we're in Florida." And they're like, it'd be like saying Rancho Cucamonga based. And as I walked off the plane, I go, "Hey, that's so crazy. You said you're from Fresno." I go, "I'm from Fresno." And then the flight attendant was like, "I'm sorry." I was like, "Dang, we don't even get love from each other."
Right. That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's a great experience to share for sure.
So when you started comedy, before comedy, you said you were playing football, and
yes, sirree. So I was playing football. I didn't get the scholarship I wanted. Really just broke my heart. So I'm playing at a junior college called Chaffey College, which is one of the top schools in Southern Cal as far as junior college football. And then, as I'm doing my comedy in the off season, one thing I started to realize, comedy is in the locker room all the time. Comedy, I mean, if you hang around football players, they're always talking, they're always laughing. "Oh, look at his shoes. What are those? Oh, look at this busted jacket." So it kind of was a natural forum for me to just work on material. So
yeah, it's so true. I mean, I wasn't on the football team, but I would be in the locker room, like, okay, I was in PE. I'd shared like a lot of football players were we had the same PE class or whatever. And so I remember when people were like, you should be a comedian, you should be funny. I'd be like, I'm not funny. The football players are funny. They're just naturally funny, just funny. And then you realize like, oh, there is a difference between making your friends laugh and then making people like strangers laugh. And that is a difference. It takes a certain skill. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, in the natural environment, just hanging out in a locker room, you get a bunch of football players, a bunch of buddies, a bunch of athletes. It's going to be pretty funny.
Yeah, we had some great times. I mean, I still remember some of the jokes that were said, some of the we used to bag on each other. And to your point, it helped me develop the confidence so I could get on that stage.
Yeah. And then you eventually start kind of writing stuff down. And, from what the videos that I saw, what I like about your comedy also is it's clean. You didn't go too raw with it. And I like that, because I think that's one way to separate yourself from sort of what's out there. Because right now, especially with the internet, it's the Wild West. People are like, I can do whatever I want. But I still think at the end of the day, you got to kind of be true to yourself. And if and for me, if I see someone getting too dirty and they're still kind of learning how to do comedy or still kind of working their way up, it's I don't really watch them. I'm like, okay, and you see it. I mean, you're out there, you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of
I've told me that. And I feel like trying to be clean, I know it's a challenge, but I work with kids, so I have to be able to talk about Toy Story or Spider-Man, the things that they have and just make it fun for them.
I mean, there's some great comedians that used to work in the school system where, I mean, years later, they'll talk, I'll see on stage where they were like, yeah, I was a music school teacher. I was a teacher. And you're like, oh, wow. That kind of explains why they're actually really clever, good. Cause maybe they felt like they got to challenge themselves, where you're like, I mean, if you were to see my comedy, like the first 10 years, it was not that it was really filthy, but it was definitely on the dirtier side because there was no rules. And I was just like, I'm being funny. And then you realize, yeah, exactly. Then you eventually are like, oh, let me, kind of get a little bit clever with it. And, like, I love the thing you were doing about your addiction to Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, yeah. I feel it's super relatable, and then I can stay clean and talk about that. And, people will say, oh yeah, I love Girl Scout cookies too. And then, the audience is with me and I'm just sharing a story that we all can laugh at. So.
Yeah, my thing is, and I got to stop this, is melted cheese, because my wife will shred cheese and put them in little Ziploc bags, and it just makes it so easy. It's just right there. I'm like, it's like, melt me. It's like, okay, 30 seconds in the microwave, 45 seconds. So I got to learn not to, I went last night. I didn't do it. So I think I can do it again. I think I can make it to 2 nights and then 3.
Well, cheese, it makes everything better, whether it's nachos, tacos.
I know. It's like, gosh, man, that, excuse me, I'm gonna go eat some cheese right now. Yeah. That'd be funny. They take your photo and instead of saying cheese, you're like Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, let me ask you this: with football, did you ever have those moments where you were like you know what I mean, just like a star moment where you're like, everyone's cheering for you and you had that, that's this, as a kid, that's the thing we all fantasize about.
Yeah, my top highlight from college was we played versus Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And so I had an interception versus them. My whole family was there and everybody, we got to share that. So we still talk about that. And honestly, that feeling that I have of having my family see me make a great play, I get that same feeling when I'm on stage and I just have a great, performance. So that was just amazing. That was my top highlight for sure.
That's good, man. Interception. It's like, oh, wow. That's, you know what I mean? That's just great. That's got to be like awesome when you grab it and wow.
Yeah,
and
the feeling is great because you put so much hard work into it, and then to make a play, you feel like, okay.
Do you guys still get together and play football? Like how like families will like, hey, let's have a little fun game on Thanksgiving or something like that. Do you guys?
Everybody calls me on Thanksgiving. Hey, we're having a turkey bowl. I usually just watch. My body's taking a lot of hits, and there was one Thanksgiving I went out there and kind of overdid it. So I was limping around at work, and kids were like, "Mr. Cook, why are you walking like that?" So I was like, I can't do the turkey bowls anymore.
Yeah, it's it's fun because I notice a lot of athletes that they're once they're in it for so long, and it means something to so important that I guess it's hard for them just to sort of dabble for fun. I guess I don't know. I'm just putting on my own feelings of why. Like I know a guy that was he was a professional water polo player for 12 years in, I think, Finland or something. And I saw him at the pool with his wife and kids, but he was just hanging out on the side. They were all in the water. And I said, "Do you still swim?" And he's like, you know, 12 years as a professional player, you know, every now and then I get in and kind of, but I think he doesn't, there's not the love and the fun that the rest of us would have. And
yeah, sometimes that fire, you know, that candle gets put out. It's just you've been doing it so much, and when you dedicate so much of your life to a sport, it's tough.
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful for comedy because, you know, this doesn't beat up my body.
Right.
You know, I'm not taking those hits, but I can still feel that feeling of, wow, that was a great performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your writing process like?
Great question. My writing process, I'm traditional, so I use pen and paper. And then I just, if I have a thought, I put it down, you know, and then I just try to build off of that.
Same thing. I got the yellow pad and the pen and the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got my pad and paper. So I just write things down. And being a therapist, there's so much material. I mean, the things that I'm witnessing all the time is hilarious. So once I have it written down, I'll try to review it, go through it a couple times. And then I'll take it to an open mic and then just really work it there and, you know, move stuff around, erase this, add that. And then try to perfect the set. So
that's good. I usually record and then I listen on the way home, or I'll set aside some time to listen. There was a lot of shows that I would record and then I'll be like, I'll get around to listening to it, and I wouldn't. So I found that's another pattern that I have to, you know, I made myself like, okay, don't just do half the job, that you got to finish it. You know?
Yeah, recording is so big. You know, I've done some recording and freestyled sometimes in an open mic, or something came up that I didn't even have on paper, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta go listen to that. Maybe I can, you know, work that into my set.
Let's before we wrap up, I want to also ask, what are some therapy tips you can give comics and people that are listening and watching? I know, like, sometimes we get, you know, during the lockdown there was a sense of loneliness. Is there something that we can do to overcome, or some tips that you'd give, like, to?
Absolutely. And, you know, I personally feel like comedy is a therapeutic process for most of us that do it, if not all of us. We've all been through some things and, you know, that tough time in your life. But my suggestion or any recommendations I would have is, when you do feel that pain, just understand that this is a part of our life. Everybody's going through something. And if you can find a way to take that pain and share that experience, whether that be, you know, your credit card debt, whether that be, you know, a fight you had with your wife, you can put that into a story, and it kind of helps you to grow through that too. And then you've just taken that pain and you've turned it into a moment where you can share with others. So it's
absolutely right. Like the other day I had something silly happen, but it was like, you know, it's like, man, it was frustrating. I was on my way to the park to go meet with my wife and son. They were hiking, and I'm like, oh, I'll be right there. So I go to tie my shoes, and bam, my shoestring snaps. And I'm like, oh, man. So I'm like, you know, now I'm having to rethread, and I'm like, it's frustrating. Then I go to my car, I turn the key, and the car doesn't start. And I'm like, there's like two things, but, you know, in the moment I was like, oh, you know, I called AAA, and then but we worked it out. I got a new battery. We're good. But it was those moments of like, you just have to, like, kind of laugh, you know, like maybe not in the exact moment. I couldn't really laugh, like, because it was like, wow. I mean, the shoelace thing, it was no big deal. But then, you know, here's another thing I laugh. And actually those I said those two, but we're going to Quentin Tarantino it. The night before, I performed at a comedy club, and the club owner said, yeah, use this parking lot. They don't give tickets after 6. So I'm driving up the 110 freeway, and I see this piece of paper flapping. And I'm like, what's that? As soon as I park, there was like a little ticket, and I got a $52 ticket. And I'm like, he told me to park there. And I'm like, so between the parking ticket, the broken shoelace, the battery, I'm like, oh boy, you know,
great comedy sets. You know, once you can, you know, take that moment and just take a deep breath, you can just write. I'm sure you are. You're a vet, so.
Yeah, even this, I was like, well, but Jang, if I have to have my car worked on, how am I going to do my interview with Rob? And then, and then you also don't want to look like a flake because I'm like 11 a.m. Monday, we'll do it. And I don't want to be like, can we push it off? I have this battery and shoelace problem. It's like, you know, you know.
Yeah, I had a car problem too. I was coming home from LA from a comedy club store, and a tire went out. This was about 2 weeks ago. It was about 11:30, and the tow truck didn't even show up till close to 1. So it was one of those moments, like you said. In the moment, it wasn't funny, but now I'm working on sharing.
Yeah, yeah. What happened again to your car?
Well, I was driving home. I had just left. I do about at least three open mics when I go to LA. I'm driving home. I'm on the 210, and boom, I can tell the tire's gone.
Ooh.
So I was able to pull off the freeway, pulled into a parking lot, called AAA. It took them a little while to get there. And I'm just thinking like, man, I got to go to work tomorrow. How am I going to make it?
Right.
So in that moment, it was a little tough.
And then you just start hitting them with jokes like, hey, buddy, you made me wait a long time. This shirt made me tired. Get it? Right. This is not, you're like, this is not a good year.
Right. Right. The joke starts writing itself. So I had a great conversation with the tow truck driver too.
You start using it as a mic. You're like, hey, it's a bringer. Do you have any other tow truck guys with you?
Right. So I was like, okay, the set is called Tow Truck Driver.
Tow truck driver. Yeah, that man, it's like a hero when those guys show up. You're like,
oh my God.
You're like, thank you. I know. It's like they saved the day. Like I literally I had to call up 3 times to fix it, to give easy. And the guy made it look easy though. He's like, yeah, just take it to the auto parts store and they'll just clean your battery and it'll be easy. And of course I get there and they were like, oh, it's a liability. You have to do it yourself. And they just give me something to squirt on the battery and then some paper towels. It didn't work, And then you're like sitting there like going, man, I'm having some bad luck today, but that's okay. And then I look up and there was skywriting in the sky and it said Netflix is a joke festival. And I was like, wow, there's another thing. I'm not even invited to the festival.
It's like, man, you got to be at the fest.
I know I'm not in the festival. And it was frustrating. I have car problems. And it was almost like this skywriting was like, in your face, Darren. Life isn't going good for you at this moment, bro.
Heckled you, man.
I know. I was like, okay, all right. I'm canceling my Netflix. Canceling. I'm giving back my password to my cousin.
Right. I'll never log in again.
Why I oughta. No. Rob, it was great having you on. I want to thank you for taking your time to come on the Pocket Party podcast. And people can find you on all social media. I want to say it, Rob Cook Comedy.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. And Rob Cook Comedy. Keep people updated on where I'm going to perform. Got some shows going on this weekend, so look forward to having people and making people laugh.
Yeah, making people laugh. And if you're not feeling well, I read this a couple of years ago. They said when it comes to like therapy or something, they said if you're feeling the blues, for example, they said just kind of get up and just start moving, put on some happy music, and literally start shaking, dancing around, and that I guess that right that the physical aspect
physical movement is great for your brain. It's great for your emotions, singing and dancing, whether that's your favorite song or, I'm singing and dancing with these kids all the time. We're singing Old MacDonald and Days of the Week. So to your point, that physical movement is great for you and your mental.
I always wanted, when I first started, I wanted to learn how to riff, and that means for the audience, that means, improvise outside of your act. And this is so elementary. This is what I did. I forgot that I did this until you said that. I said I used to do this song, Old MacDonald. I go, Old MacDonald had a farm, and I would get the audience to yell out like what he had, and then I would just riff off of it because but then I found eventually they would try to say stuff that was more adult, and I was like, okay, let's keep it clean, guys.
Right, and the farm we're talking about here.
And on this farm, and then they would just say, and I would try to riff off of it. But then eventually, I learned to do that, and I learned to riff from there to being natural. And something I've learned is to have a conversation, not a presentation. Right. So as you're performing, you kind of, But that was my riffing 101, like fill in the blank, you guys yell out, you know. So
yeah, and that's awesome, man. I mean, I don't have the confidence quite yet, but you know, I might have to just start doing a little more crowd work and getting them involved, because like you said, it's a conversation.
yeah, and also I try to do it where where the person, they themselves or the audience doesn't feel like they're being attacked, because then it could get weird. So a lot of times I'll just say in general, like because I used to be like, you know, like this guy knows what I'm talking about, but then that person might be like, you know, and they might feel like they're you know. So I try not to do that, like, because even though sometimes I feel like I should, you know, like, oh, here's something that happened one time. I wanted to do some joke. I wanted to jump into the shaving my head, going bald jokes, right?
Okay.
But the way the lights are, they hit you. I saw this guy who was bald, and I go, "Hey, how long you been?" I was trying to bond. I go, "How long have you been shaving your head?" And he goes, "I don't." And then I stepped out a lot, and I realized he just had a really high forehead. Like his forehead was super high, and he had like all this hair back here. But I did. So I've learned to not single people out and say, you know,
Yeah.
or here's a big one too. How long have you guys been dating? And then it turns out that they're, you know, it's, you know what I mean? Like the age.
Not dating,
yeah. Yeah, they're not dating. It's their parents, or I'll say like, I remember I'll ask if don't assume that they're sitting with their mom, because that could be their wife, yeah. You know, like, or their husband, you know what I mean? The age difference thing. Like I used to be like, so whatever, I would say somebody, and it's like, my mom, that's my wife. And it's like, oh gosh, it's like, yeah, all those little things I've learned. So please learn from my little landmines and mistakes. Don't do these, Rob. Like,
okay, I'm taking notes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, one other time I saw two ladies, but it turns out but the person spoke and it was a guy. He was just a little chubby, and the way the lights are, I thought it was two ladies, but it wasn't. It was like, oh my gosh. So it's like, these are honest mistakes that and when that happens, I just try to keep it moving, and hey, let me jump into my Girl Scout cookie bit or whatever.
Okay.
Like,
I'm going to take notes. Yeah. I mean, it's good for me to hear that,
yeah.
You know, you have the experience, and I'm just looking for some direction. I think I have potential, you know, I'm just going to keep going.
Keep going, keep reaching out, and keep working hard. And anyways, Rob Cook Comedy, check him out, guys. And thank you again, and have a great one, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
You got it. Bye.
Everybody listen to Darren Carter. We all know he's the party starter. So if you want to listen to a podcast for free, then listen to The Pocket Party.